On Friday, Donald Trump has signed the big, beautiful bill with a lavish ceremony, making it official and immediately impactful. What's inside this sweeping legislation? From the deep cuts in SNAP and Medicaid to the massive tax breaks for the wealthy. We are going to unpack it all here right after the intro. Hello and welcome to yet another video from Bloombridge Capital. My name is Patrick and I have my colleague Henrik sitting next to me. He is the expert about this bill. He studied it so thoroughly and therefore I don't want to spend more time just talking about it. I'll just hand over the mic to him. Henrik, what is this bill about? What is it going to mean for the American people and what kind of ramifications will it have on the economy? Let's discuss it all, starting with what's actually in the bill.
Okay, well, let's dive right into it. So first up, obviously, we have the cuts to food assistance, so SNAP, especially with a big increase in eligibility requirements and a shifting from funding from the federal government to the states. We also had some big cuts to Medicaid, with the provider tax lowered from 6% to only 3.5%, also alongside with stricter eligibility, potentially causing up to 12 million Americans to lose coverage over the next few years. We are also getting a phase out of the clean energy tax credits for wind and solar energy, gradually stepping down and being eliminated by 2028. And there's an even faster phase out for the tax credits for electrical vehicles, which are already set to expire in September 2025. But there are also some massive permanent tax cuts. Now, these are a continuation of the tax cuts that were signed into law by Trump in 2017, but this time around he's making them permanent. But there are also further tax breaks, like increased tax credits for social benefits, which are primarily aiding older, wealthier Americans because there are higher tax credits for those over the age of 65 and higher tax credits with an income of above $75,000. But there's more, because there are extended tax credits for tips, overtime pay, and auto loan interest rates. But these will all phase out in 2028, so pretty much the exact time when Trump himself will probably leave office. And lastly, the cap on state and local tax deductions jumps from $10,000 to $40,000. Now, on the other hand, we've also seen some big budget increases. So, for example, ICE's budget soars by over $100 billion, who previously only got about $8 billion annually. Now, from this money, about $45 billion are going to new detention facilities, $46 billion are going to the border wall, and about $30 billion to hire new ICE agents. But there's even more stuff planned. We also saw a budget rise for the US military by more than $150 billion, including funding for a Golden Dome defense system over America, akin to Israel's Iron Dome. Additionally, there are also countless smaller provisions that don't really have that much of an impact, but notably a clause blocking AI legislation for 10 years has been removed. But here comes the most important part. The debt ceiling climbs by $5 trillion, which is a massive increase, but may prove to be necessary, since the big beautiful bill could add about $3.3 trillion to the deficit over the next decade. This will saddle Americans with a massive new debt and is expected to fuel significant inflation, and it's kind of a move out of left field considering all of Trump's promises and the initial plans with Deutsch, the Department of Government Efficiency. So we can definitely say that all in all, this bill introduces a lot of spending, or at least tax cuts, and not all that much money saving if you break it down. This will definitely lead to some inflation, which we already covered in our last video. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check that out. But we'll also dive a bit into it right now.
Thanks, Henrik, for telling us what's in the bill. So essentially that means that Americans are going to spend a lot more of their household money and they're going to do that on credit. Credit has always been what the Americans were doing, and therefore we have lots of historical parallels that happened like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and even 40 years ago, where the economy was in a similar state. So if we take those happenings and the actions that were taken there, for instance, in 1984, we can get an educated guess on what is going to happen in the economy. Let's start with 1984. There, the mandate was also to weaken the dollar to get a better trade deficit, essentially leading to very high inflation. That is number one. So, all the goods, metals, building materials, oil, these things should be rising in price, as well as housing too. This means real estate prices are probably going to rise even more. In the last time, like in 1984, they rose and peaked about 30 to 40% above their current levels. If we assume something similar is happening, this would mean that rents are going to rise by at least 20% and maybe even house prices. Now, locally speaking, that is probably not the case. This is just a generalization and should only be taken as such. After all, then we also have stock market performance. So stocks should rise in price as well. They are at all-time highs, and there's currently nothing telling us that these are gonna set to fall. And therefore, stock prices are probably gonna be higher next year from current levels. The only problem that we are gonna have to face is what's going to happen with all this debt that America is accruing and what the ramifications will be. Because one effect is something that we saw is that the bond market is not really reacting too well to it, which means that the market is telling us that the debt is some problem. So therefore, we also think that this bill is gonna be what breaks the camel's back. The economy will get into overdrive, but we'll have to reprice lots of the ramifications that are only going to be priced in further down the line. So we expect a very high sentiment on every market. Every market is probably going to rise. After that, we're going to peak in that sentiment and we're going to actually enter the recession that everyone was expecting for the last 5 years, which has never happened so far. So we think the recession is now closer than we think, but it's still further away, that we can still make money on the markets, also participate in the commodity markets performance as inflation will be rising, and also get into some housing, because the bottom of the housing repricing could be the current price that we're currently having. In that sense, if you want to know how to act more precisely in this with your individual performance, you can consult a financial advisor. If you wish to have more information about these, you can check out our free Discord. There we have golden nuggets laid down, and also our premium group is in there, where we cover over 180 stocks, the real estate market, and also Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and many other altcoins. Do check us out. Until next time, here at Bloomberg Capital.